Half an hour before the market opens on Tuesday, May 14th. Today, we are going to expect at least some volatility to come back into the market, but we have a CPI report tomorrow, so not too sure how much volume we'll get. If we don't get a lot of volume, then we're probably not going to see a lot of movement in the market today. But we did have PPI report come out half an hour ago, so let's see how that's affecting the markets. So it looks like flat. Very flat. Almost nothing on the S&P 500, almost nothing on the Dow. The only one that is a little bit more than nothing is NASDAQ, and even that is only at 20 basis points. So that's randomness right there. That means so far the PPI hasn't had a huge impact. Let's see in the pre-market session. Okay, so it did have a big impact. We got a large reaction to the downside, but we basically completely recovered from it. And then it looks like we're barely beginning to move downwards. So we're definitely getting some volatility into this market. So far, we're leaning to the downside. The initial reaction was very negative, and then we recovered from it. So let's see what that report says. Oh, they added Powell speaking. That wasn't there yesterday. Interesting. So, and he's doing it not too long after Lisa Cook. And then Jeffrey Schmidt. I don't think any of these speakers were on the calendar yesterday. That's interesting that all these people want to speak. So let's take a look at PPI. Year on year is what we care by far the most about, and then X food and energy is going to be a lot more significant. So year on year, prior 2.1 revised to 1.8 to make themselves look a bit better, I guess. And then consensus was 2.2, and we got consensus, but it was higher than both the prior and the prior revised. So that's not good news. That means inflation is increasing year on year on the PPI, and then the month on month. So it looks like it's accelerating in recent times. And then X food and energy year on year, this one is big, where the prior is 2.4. The consensus was that it would come down a little bit, but we're actually at 2.4. What that means is nothing happened in the last year. For all the efforts that the Fed made, all the work that they did, all the stuff that they were saying that they were doing, nothing happened. Zero impact. And that's not good news for the Fed. On month, you can see that's actually up quite a bit, 0.2% to 0.5%, especially if you take their prior revised number down 0.1%. So this is not great for the Fed. There's some explaining to do, where in the last year we've made zero progress. So it's looking like we're going to have that higher for longer language continue, where we had several speakers starting to talk about, the data is not, we're going to let the data support it. We're going to wait for, we favor keeping rates where they are over increasing rates. So they're no longer talking about cutting, or at least in recent times, they were no longer talking about cutting. So we went from 6 rate cuts in 2024 down to 3 rate cuts in 2024 to maybe 1 rate cut in 2024, or some people still hoping and talking about 2 or 3 rate cuts in 2024 to right now it's really looking like 0. And then we had Biden blow up and say, oh, for sure, there's going to be one, at least one this year. Well, if the data continues to go this way and we don't get political, then no, it does not look like we are going to get it. So my expectation is that CPI would probably reflect the same thing as PPI, but the CPI is the more impactful report. So we would expect still some money to be reserved and sitting on the sidelines until CPI comes out tomorrow. So we might not get that volume today. A lot will depend on what Jerome Powell says in about an hour. So we definitely don't want to trade in that first half hour of the markets. We want to see what is going to happen. Between the PPI and Jerome Powell together, they could have a similar impact as the CPI by itself. So we really do want to wait. This is why yesterday in all of our portfolios and classes, we said, let's hang on. Oh, let's not put, there's some juicy looking trades, but we're not going to put on anything because we really don't know what is going to happen given where we were in the market. So it looks like we're down, but not really down that much, right? We're only not even 40, like 30 cents, 33 cents maybe on the S&P, at least so far in the pre-market, which brings us near the bottom range of yesterday. It's really not significant at all. So taken into a larger context, this movement, what it is it's introducing volatility. So what will be really interesting to see is one, VIX, see what's happening over there. Two, well, we got this big reaction in the S&P 500, but we recovered. Did the same thing happen in the bonds? So we might as well take a look at that first, since we're over here. And yeah, went way down, and then we completely recovered. The bonds recovered was a little bit more resilient than even the S&P 500. So we'll see if that holds up when Powell speaks in an hour. But so far, zero impact. The initial reaction is exactly what we'd expect, which is downward movement. But so far, that was already completely undone. And the market will now wait for Powell. After Powell, we may start to get some movement. If he says something wild or unexpected, then we'll get really directional and maybe some volume will come in. If we don't get that volume, again, we're just going to be sitting and waiting for tomorrow. Let's take a look at that VIX. Okay, so up this morning and then way up, and then we came right back down, reflecting everything that we saw so far. We'll look at the minute by minute just to make sure that it lines up with everything else, but I don't have any reason to believe that it would not. Oh, so that's interesting. So I was wrong. The spike came before. What time is this? No, I'm wrong. It's just the timelines, for whatever reason, aren't matching. I don't know why they have this shifted. It totally deceived me. So 5:30, we got that big spike up, just like this big spike down. And then we traded down, 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 down. And actually below, well, similar. Okay. So yeah, this is a mirror reflection right here. So no surprises right there. We are slightly elevated in VIX, so there's still uncertainty in this market, a little bit more than we did last week. So that's why VIX has been slowly creeping up. We still have Powell speaking in not too long from now, and then we have the CPI, and then we have a slew of data, the economic data over the next 2 days as well. So it's not surprising that this VIX is up a little bit. It's not significant. We're at 13.72. We're just not even at the upper range of this normal range for 2024. So that's nothing to get excited about. So this is probably going to be a bit of a snooze fest until we get to Powell speaking. If he doesn't say anything significant, then it's going to be a snooze fest for the rest of the day, most likely, because we still have that CPI come out. Let's take a look at earnings, though. We did have some significant things coming out. Let's see what came out already. Home Depot. Okay, so we'll take a look at Home Depot, Jack in the Box. Okay, we'll take a look at that. Some fast food. Looks like that's about it. Let's take a look at Home Depot and Jack in the Box. Okay, Home Depot jerking us around, initially down, then a big spike up, and then back down after that PPI report. So looks like earnings did not give us a huge direction. We had a surprise to downside on revenue, even though we had good earnings. So that means if your revenue is down, but you're still making earnings, somehow you're making less cost because your sales are down. So they may have laid people off, they may have done some things to cut costs, but long term, that's not sustainable. So that wouldn't that's why there's a negative impact, even though their earnings are up. But then something happened over here. People got over enthusiastic and then calmed down, came back to flat, and then the PPI report drove us downwards. Producers Price Index. That means costs are going up for Home Depot. So we cut costs in order to keep our earnings up. And then, well, sorry, market is saying your costs are still going up. So that's why we have this negative reaction right here. Okay, and the Jack in the Box. Jack in the Box a little bit higher. Okay, so did they report yet? They haven't reported yet. They're reporting a little later. So this is just random market action. I wouldn't pre-market action. There's not that much activity, so I would completely dismiss this and wait until the actual numbers come out. But really, Jack in the Box, in light of PPI and Jerome Powell speaking, no one's really going to be paying attention to what Jack in the Box is doing unless you happen to be in a Jack in the Box position. So I wouldn't put too much credence into the Jack in the Box. Really, what we're looking for is what Powell is going to say at this moment. And then what Powell says or doesn't say is going to determine whether or not we get volume in this market. Will probably, no matter what, he's probably going to introduce volatility. But without volume, we're not going to get a huge direction in the S&P 500. So that means it seems like a little bit more likely of another chop sideways, of a little bit more likely of another snooze fest today, although we do have volatility being introduced, so we could see a larger range of chops or larger bars today than we have over the last couple of days. Overall, we are not going to expect them to really move directionally. So here, the last couple of days, yeah, we spanned a couple of these regions, but we basically ended up where we started. Both days we spanned two regions and ended up where we started. Even on Friday, we spanned two regions. This one was a larger region, but at least it was directional. So today, we might span two regions. It might be directional or it might not be directional, but if it's just two regions, we haven't really gone anywhere. So it'd be 522 or 518. And on this daily chart, you can see 522 is just right here. And 518 is just right here. So it wouldn't change our chart significantly. If we move to the downside, it basically match this green bar right here, and we'd be near the EMA 8. So it doesn't look like any decisions are going to be made in the market today. At least it doesn't seem very likely. Everything's going to depend on Powell and how extreme he says, but no decisions are being made. He's not going to come out unless there's an emergency or surprise rate change, which I highly doubt because it's unfounded. There's no data to support. It'd be really, in my mind, it'd be impossible to justify at this point. We're not going to expect a lot of movement today. It might come tomorrow. So most likely quiet day today. There's not much else to talk about. Everyone's just going to wait for Powell. So I will end it here and I will see you in the aftermarket. Have a wonderful day, everyone.